Welcome to the Governor of College Football. Welcome to the Governor of College Football, and I am the Governor of College Football, also known as Lever KT. Before we get into today's episode, Florida State's path for winning the ACC, make sure you guys like, comment, share, subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Fun fact, 97% of our viewership are unsubscribed, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, engage that notification bell, and chill out with the good guys. Also, follow us on Twitter at the CFB Nation. Nino does a great job at running our Twitter handle. Also, never forget, this is brought to you by the T2T Network. That's Toilets to Titles. If you are a fan of fantasy football and not following Toilets to Titles, what are you doing? I almost want to call you a casual. Make sure you check them out on Twitter at Toilets to Title. Also on Twitter, you'll be able to find their Gilded. Join their Gilded. They run a plethora of fantasy leagues, but more importantly, they invented a different style of fantasy league called Frankenstein. Listen, I'm not the biggest fantasy guy, so I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm just a fan of college football, so make sure you guys check that out, and they'll tell you more about that. Let's get into this Florida State episode. I'm super duper excited about it. Florida State is such a damn good football team. Like, what Norvell was able to do in 2022, there were many people before the season started calling for his job. Oh, how soon they forget. They was calling for his job. They thought he was underwhelming. They thought it was time to make a change. A lot of people wanted to go after Deion Sanders. How soon do we forget? Now, a year later, Florida State is just one of those teams everybody is talking about. I had them ranked number 5 in my preseason poll, and that will make them just outside looking in the college football playoff. If we strip the jerseys off of these players, if we remove the coaches, if we remove the team names, if we just look purely at the roster, Florida State has one of the most talented rosters in all of college football. That is not hyperbole. That is fact. 100% fact. Florida State's 2022 campaign restored some of the greatness of what Florida State brings to college football. Starting in week 1, we saw something different from this Florida State team when they ruined Brian Kelly's debut. You know, his LSU debut was ruined by Florida State. Florida State wasn't expected to win that game. I don't remember what the line was, but pretty much everybody had LSU winning the game. And then you think about it. Florida State, they started off the season 4-0. They were looking good, lost 3 straight, and then people started questioning their Norvell again. Don't be confused. 6 wins in a row, including the Cheez-It Bowl win over Oklahoma. A lot of people are thinking and saying, yo, this Florida State team is legit. Let's talk about Florida State offensively. The Noles are coming off a season in which they averaged 36 points per game, 15th in the nation, including the top 30 in both passing and rushing. That is unheard of. That is difficult to do. And they were actually top 28, but, top 30 just sound better. They were 13th rushing offensively, 28th passing, and their success rate. Success rate is analytical stat. Please check out collegefootballdata.com. Bill Connolly's SP+. He does a great job with that. Success rate is pretty much valued at, on first down, you pick up at least half of the yards. So on second down, you'll be starting at, second and 5 or better. Or on second down, you pick up at least 70% of the yards. So that's, that will lead you to third and 3 and better. And on third and fourth downs, you gain a first down or touchdown, of course. They did that at a 48% clip. That is damn good. And you think about it, Alex Atkins did such a great job with this offense last year. Just a year before that, they had Kenny Dillingham, one of the hottest head coaching names of, offensive coordinator names in all of college football this past season with Oregon. And then he's now at Arizona State. So you think of what Alex Atkins done. This offense was 8.5 points per game better with him than they were with Kenny Dillingham. That's just something to think about. Jordan Travis is must-see TV. Before last year's campaign, a lot of people just looked at Jordan Travis as a scrambling quarterback. That's all he was looked upon. Granted, he was still able to do that last season, but he was able to do it much more from the pocket. 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. No. And then if you look at it, not only do they have him, behind him at running back, they got Trey Benson. At wideout, they got Johnny Wilson, and Johnny Wilson's one of the tallest wide receivers in all of college football. And then they got South Carolina transfer Jaheim Bell. They are loaded offensively. Also, you think about Kentron Portier. You know, he was able to score 4 touchdowns on 14 catches last season. His target share should definitely go up this season. And then what can freshman Hakeem Williams do? One of the top freshmen coming in, top freshman wide receivers coming in. Will he be able to scratch the field this year? I think he will. I'm not sure how, much of an impact he'll make, but he'll certainly get a chance to make some plays. Let's talk about Florida State defensively now. Adam Fuller and Randy Shannon, that are the play callers defensively. Florida State likes to run this hybrid 4-3, 4-2-5, but I think they lean more towards the 4-2-5 than the 4-3. You think about their defense, the first name that comes to mind is Jared Verse. And when you think about Florida State in totality, the first name that comes to mind may be Jared Verse. Jared Verse should be one of the first players taken in this upcoming 2024 NFL draft. Make sure you check out On the Clock. That's on Toilets to Title brand. Just search Toilets to Titles in the YouTube search. Watch that live every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. We are talking 2024 draft early, very early. Last week, we talked offensively about the Senior Bowl, our offensive wish list for the Senior Bowl. And, we dive in deep, bro. And as my boy Nino and Boomer would say, we get into the rabbit hole. So check that out. If you love the draft, you want to find out, we've done 1 or 2 mock drafts already. So check out On the Clock. It's a weekly show. We live every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Let's get back to this. Florida State's pass defense was so great last season. I think for the most part, 1, they could cover on the back end. 2, their ability to get to the opposing passer, 4th in the nation against the pass. That is phenomenal. Also on passing downs, they're not afraid to run the dime. They're not afraid to run too high safety. They believe that they can get pressure with their front 4. And that's something we're starting to see in the NFL. For so long in the NFL, we were saying, hey, send more than the offense get blocked. That was the model. But now you're seeing teams like the Eagles. The Bears is another team that are able to get pressure with 4. In college football, Florida State can get pressure with 4. I believe this defense, their biggest Achilles heel was stopping the run last year. And I believe they were like middle of the road, somewhere around 74 against the run last year. But, they're against the pass. If they can get that number up against the run, they can certainly be much better. Let's talk about the field. Let's talk about some of these competing teams against Florida State that, some people will have to worry about. But I'm going to eliminate these other teams and tell you why Florida State can win the ACC and ultimately get a college football playoff berth. First thing first, let's look at UNC. I think UNC is a team that a lot of people believe in. It's a team that's getting a lot of buzz. Also, shout out to K Ford. If you guys don't know who K Ford is, he's a ratings guy. You could just search K Ford ratings on Twitter. He will pop up. These are his graphics. I love these graphics that he do because it gives you a lot of information, and you don't have to go through multiple windows to get to it. So he created this. Shout out to him. Always make sure I get my just due to K Ford because he's that guy. So North Carolina overall has the 62 ranked schedule. A little bit better than middle of the road. Let's go down to who they play this season. They play South Carolina. South Carolina is a daggone good team. I had South Carolina ranked 25 in my college football rankings, and I believe I had North Carolina at 24. So that's a neutral site game. Then they play Appalachian State. Then they're playing Minnesota. They Big Ten territory at Pitt, Syracuse, Miami. Miami's going to be a much better team this season. Virginia's got a long way to go. Georgia Tech, Campbell, Duke, and in the season at Clemson, at NC State. I am giving them losses for both of those games, at Clemson and at NC State. I believe in what NC State can do. I believe in their offensive coordinator, Robert Anai. He's one of the best play callers in all of the nation. And the fact that him and Brennan Armstrong are linking up to do it again like they did in Virginia, I believe in them. So let's talk about, North Carolina. Everybody knows about Drake May. Drake May has been getting a lot of Heisman hype, an awful lot of Heisman hype. And of course, he'll probably be the second quarterback taken off the board in the 2024 draft unless this year things just don't go well. And we've seen it before. I mentioned South Carolina before. I got to mention Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler's supposed to be the number 1 quarterback taken. during the 2022 draft. That was during the 2021 college football season. These things aren't just a given. I think the only given is that Caleb Williams will probably be the first player off the board in next year's upcoming draft. But I don't think, Drake May being the second or third quarterback is a give me, and I'm going to explain why. So, UNC is returning, 7 starters defensively. And the biggest issue with UNC was their defense last year. It was 100% their defense last year. Charlton Warren and Tommy Thigpen just couldn't get it done. They've ranked 115th in total defense last year. That is abysmal. That just cannot happen. But this year they're bringing in Gene Chizik, and I think they want to shore up their defense a little more. My concern offensively is that Drake May led UNC in rushing last year. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And you got to keep in mind that in college football, the sacks count against your rushing yards, which is even more crazy. But I do love the running back tandem of Elijah Green and Omarion Hampton. I believe they can get those numbers up, and they can be the leading rushers. Here's the issue with UNC. Who's going to replace Anton Green and Josh Downs, who are now in the NFL? Who's going to replace that production? They lost a lot of production over the last few years at skill positions offensively. They lost a lot of production. I like UNC. I just don't think they'll have enough. And you bring in that schedule, those last 2 games, to start the season versus a hungry South Carolina team. I have spoken great words about Shane Beamer. I'm a big believer in Shane Beamer. I'm a big believer in his dad. I just don't think UNC is that team right now. But I believe they're a budding team, but I think they might have lost too much at wide receiver, and I'm not sure if their defense could do a complete 360. They may could do a 180. I'm not sure if they could do a 360. Next, let's talk about Duke. I think Duke is just like one of those teams that people are now starting to get it. Like that combination of Mike Elko and Riley Leonard is just fantastic. They were able to win 9 ball games last year, including the bowl victory. They was able to win 9 games. They got a pretty tough schedule. They start out, versus Clemson. That game is at Duke. That's a Monday night game. And I will be there. I will be in attendance for that game. I had to think about my schedule. I will be there for that first game of the season. Then they play Lafayette. Northwestern at home, even though they start their first 3 games at home. No pushover. At UConn. UConn is no pushover. I'm just letting everybody know that. Versus Notre Dame. NC State, then at Florida State, at Louisville. What can Jeff Brown get out of this Louisville team this year? Versus Wake Forest, and at North Carolina, at Virginia. Virginia may have a historically bad year this year, and I don't want to say that. I live in Virginia. I always root for the local teams. It's just going to be a difficult year for Virginia this year. I like what Duke is building. I like the makeup of what they have. The fact that, like I said, Coach Elko was able to win, 9 ball games in year 1. That is fantastic. But is it too early in the process to just say, okay, Duke is here? Because there's a couple of teams we could argue. We could have certainly argued Miami in this slot over Duke. We could have even possibly maybe argued NC State in this slot over Duke. And I told y'all how I feel about NC State. I almost wanted to put NC State in this slot over Duke, but when I think about it from a broader scope, a lot of people are just high on Duke this season. So I think Duke is budding. I think Duke is building. I believe that Duke can almost, within the next few years, expel that they're just a blue blood basketball school, because they're starting to bring in primetime football talent. I mean, you see what Daniel Jones is doing in the NFL, but I don't think it's them quite yet. And now let's talk about the team all Florida State fans want to talk about. That's this Clemson team. So I had the pleasure of going down and seeing Clemson's spring game. Shout out to their staff. Shout out to my guy Ross Taylor for making that happen. I was on the field. My director Mike, he was also out there with me. He got a bunch of shots. We got a bunch of footage. I got a couple of interviews. Got to see a lot of great players. They're building something nice. They're building something really nice. And the fact that Dabo Swinney is like the Frank Sinatra of college football, because he's doing it his way. He's not doing it everybody else's way. Like, the transfer portal matters. It really does matter. And he's not dabbling with it. He's not dabbling with it at all. That's why I always say it. This is probably like my 10th time saying it. If anybody can complain about the transfer portal, it is one Mr. Dabo Swinney. I don't care if he complain about it at all because he doesn't dabble with it. He also not a big fan of JUCO players. I've also said that 100 times as well. But this may be somebody's, first time seeing this, so they know where I stand. I said this the other day on Twitter, and I'll say it again. A lot of people have feelings toward Dabo Swinney, but when you meet him, that'll completely change. I'm the type of person, if I got my mind made up, I got my mind made up. But when I met him, I believed, after speaking with him, I believed that he is who he really is. Like, he's family oriented. He loves his players. He was joking around with them. They were having a ball. They were just having an absolute ball during their spring game. He was talking to the fans, getting everybody hyped. And mind you, it was 55,000 in there for a spring game. Like, it was crazy. But let's get back to Clemson. They opened up at Duke. I think that's a winnable game. Home against Charleston Southern. Home against Florida Atlantic. Home versus Florida State. Listen, is this the year that Florida State is going to get Clemson? Clemson has been beating them for years. And if I'm being honest, Florida State hasn't beaten them since the Barack Obama administration. They've been beating them since 2014. It's time for a win. I think this is the year that Florida State is going to get Clemson. And that game is in Clemson, so I'll definitely be at that game. I will be reporting live. After the game, I'll probably just go live and talk about the game and talk about what's going on around the nation. You guys need to tap into CFB Nation, bro, because I'm telling you, we are tapped in. We're plugged in. We went to a plethora of spring games. The ACC has been showing us a lot of love, so shout out to the ACC. Big fan of ACC football. So, home against Florida State. I think Florida State can go in Death Valley and get a win. At Syracuse, that'll be a tough one, but with the loss of Robert and I, that's going to be tough. Garrett Strader had his best season with Robert and I. Robert and I is in NC State, like I said earlier. Wake Forest, Clemson should win. But like I said, the only loss I'm giving them so far is the one against Florida State. At Miami, in Coral Gables, at NC State. One of those two games, Clemson may lose. And it may be the one in NC State. I'm just saying. Home against Notre Dame. Can Clemson get their payback versus Notre Dame? Because we seen what Notre Dame did to them people last year. Versus Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Here's the thing with Clemson. Garrett Riley is one of the best play callers in all of college football. It's no secret. We've seen the success that he had with Clemson. He got a plethora. We see the success he had with TCU. Got a plethora of players drafted on that TCU rosters, including Darius Davis, who we seen at the Senior Bowl, speedster. I think he would get drafted because he had a rough couple of days at the Senior Bowl. He had one solid day at the Senior Bowl. We was also at the Senior Bowl as well. I said Kendra Miller already. Max Duggan, he got drafted in the 7th round. Quentin Johnson, can't forget about him. A plethora of those players on that offensive side of the ball got drafted, and Garrett Riley was a big reason why. Brandon Streeter, in my opinion, didn't deserve to get fired last year, but if we're comparing apples to apples, Garrett Riley is a much better play caller. So I can certainly see a situation where, like, their running back Will Shipley could win the Doak Walker this year. He's going to rush for a lot of yards. Cade Klubnik, the keys are in his hand. But with that being said, after seeing the spring game in person, I had my concerns. I really do have my concerns. And on the outside, at wide receiver, love Antonio Williams. Big fan of his. But is Bo Collins going to step up? Is he going to be a factor at wide receiver? Who's going to be the third guy? These are some of my issues with Clemson. We know one thing for certain, two things for sure. Clemson's going to be able to rush the passer. Clemson's going to be able to play defense, and you're going to see Jeremiah Trailer Jr. all over the field this year. But if I'm looking at roster to roster, I believe that Florida State has the better roster, and that's why I believe that Florida State will win the ACC and ultimately clinch a playoff berth. Let's look at Florida State's schedule to kind of figure out where we think Florida State will finish at. Alrighty. So Florida State starts off neutral site game against LSU. Will LSU get their payback? We don't know. Versus Southern Miss. Southern Miss gonna come ready for their game. Frank Gore gonna come ready for their game. At BC, my boy Nino will be at that game. So if you guys want to, not, it's one thing seeing the game on TV, and I love watching the game on TV. Never get me wrong, but when you're there you're at the field, you're on the field. It's things that you get. So Nino will be at that game. Y'all follow Nino on Twitter at @NinoBrown_T2T. He'll keep y'all posted. The game at Clemson, I told y'all I will be at. Then they play home against Virginia Tech, home against Syracuse, home against Duke. So if I'm looking at the first group of games, of course, there's 2 games that scare me. That's that LSU and Clemson game. But I think they can win both. I say they split, but I think they can win both. Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Duke, at Wake Forest, at Pitt is going to be a tough out. Phil Djokovic is going to be a problem this year. So at Pitt will be a tough out. The game versus Miami will be a tough out. North Alabama, then at Florida. This is a tough schedule. I can certainly see a scenario where Florida State finishes 11-1. I can see a scenario where they finish 10-2. But if they want to win this ACC outright and the championship and get a playoff berth, it has to be 11-1 or better. It has to be that. But I believe they have the talent to do it. My boy K Ford got them having the 36th toughest schedule in the nation. Also, he has them running, just chilling somewhere around 9 games. As I always like to say, do something nice for somebody you normally wouldn't do. Always pay it forward. Peace and love. Peace and blessings. And until next time, y'all already know what it is. One. Welcome to the Governor of College Football.